We are hosting this event to promote a dialogue on the Black Lives Matter and Sanctuary movement. The Black Lives Matter movement emerged in 2013 as a response to several events of violence against Black people, including the deaths of Trayvon Martin, Michael Brown, and Eric Garner. The founding activists, Alicia Garza, Patrice Cullors, and Opal Tometi, have embraced a grassroots foundational approach that has now transformed into an international movement with over 20 chapters, yielding an unprecedented amount of influence.
So, my part of the project is a representation of the Say Her Name movement, which emerged out of the response to the Black Lives Matter movement that left Black women out of their interests. So I'm going to show a short video, then I'll come back to you all, and then we'll get the show started.
My sister was left on the street to bleed, begging for her life, saying she didn't want to die and was told to shut the fuck up. She was told to shut the fuck up when she said she didn't want to die. My sister went to Kings County Hospital, same hospital she was born in, same hospital she died. She went as a Jane Doe. 6 hours later is when we were notified that my sister was in the morgue.
All lives do matter. Death's a death, regardless. It doesn't matter if you're like disabled or a homeless person. Your life really does matter. And if you're Black, that matters more, to me, in my opinion. I'm very tired of seeing Black women ignored when it comes to getting justice against police brutality, against racism. And I think it's important to show up and to show my support for these families that have lost women, Black women, to misogyny and racism.
Show me a man willing to fight beside me. My hand in his, the color of courage. Show me a man willing to fight beside me. My hand in his, the color of courage. There is no mountaintop worth seeing without us.
Okay. In the video, a woman mentioned misogyny and racism. The civil rights movement, feminism, and Black Lives Matter all have one thing in common: the inherent exclusion of Black women from their interests and core audience. What does this tell you? That Black women still have and never have had a platform in which they have a voice and their interests are accounted for. As we evolve, Black women are creating a space for themselves, for their voice. Movements such as Swanee's own Destined Roots and ForHarriet.com are clear examples of this. I began following For Harriet about a year ago, and since have shared and reblogged hundreds of their posts. Kimberly and her counterparts at For Harriet are taking it amongst themselves to have a voice and voice their stories. Stories of Black femininity, Black womanhood, and the experience of a Black woman. For this reason, it is with great pleasure that I welcome her to Swanee and to you all. Swanee, Kimberly Foster.
Hi guys. So first of all, thank you so much for having me. It's so crazy that my life at this point is being able to travel the country and talk to people about my baby. But I feel really, really fortunate to do this. I love this work. I'm passionate about this work. I did this work even when it wasn't paying anything, even when my mama was saying, what are you gonna do? Like what? Like, you know, like we didn't send you to Harvard so you could be blogging all day. It's very, I don't want to say vindication, but it does feel very vindicating that I can be in these spaces with people who get the work, who know the work, who appreciate the work, who understand the work. So again, thank you guys so much for having me. So I'll start by saying I'm not, oh, I need a Snapchat. Sorry. It's a thing. Okay, so everybody wave. Yay! Okay. All right, so I am not a launch speaker. One of the reasons why I started for Harriet was because I love conversations. I love to just be privy to the back and forth that people have about these issues. So I hope that while I'm kind of going through this, that you will jot down questions or take some mental notes. And maybe there's a question and answer period afterwards, so hit me with it, or if there's not, feel free to approach me to talk to you and engage you further. So I imagine that if you're sitting in this room, I don't have to make the case for you as to why the work that Black women do every day in digital community is not privileged. But I'm prepared to do that because I have this conversation all the time. I get asked all the time, why did I start the site? Why is it important? Why should they start a site? Why should they spend any amount of time online? And I used to get really frustrated because it's so clear to me. This has literally transformed my life. Social media and blogging have literally created the Kimberly that you see today. But I've realized that people just don't see the value, right? So a lot of people don't see or understand the value of the internet beyond like a Google search or like booking hotel reservations. But I engage in building. I engage in connecting. We're growing. We're organizing. So that's why digital is real to me. So I used to believe that the sort of thinking that thought that the internet is not real sprung from a generational divide, because I'm only 26 years old. You guys are younger and making me feel old at this point. But the internet has always been a part of my daily experience because of the privileges that I've been afforded. So when I was in kindergarten, we used the internet. I actually learned how to code and build websites because my mom was an engineer. And when I was about 8, she brought home an HTML book and said, you should try this. So I sat down in front of the computer. I was already kind of a bit into it. Went through the book and taught myself how to code. So when people talk about their real lives versus their internet lives, it really doesn't register for me because sending a tweet is as real to me as making a phone call. Searching the web is as real to me as going to the library. Building a rapport with somebody that I've never met in real life is just as real to me as meeting somebody face-to-face in a coffee shop. And if I'm honest, I prefer to meet you first online, right? Like, that way you can weed out the crazy. But that's not it. Because as I've delved deeper into building online spaces, into growing community, I see that even for those for whom that has not been the case, they get it. The digital divide that I'm referring to is between those who recognize the liberatory potential of the web and those who don't. What I mean by that is what I've learned through blogging and using social media literally all day, every day, to discover my passion and create a career, and in helping other women build their online presences and learn how to effectively use social media, is that along every step of the digital publishing process, from ideation to creation, from implementation to launch, the platforms that push their users to explore hidden or dormant parts of themselves, that's why social media and blogging is so great. We get to learn and connect and share the things that you would never tell anybody else. The ideas that we think everybody else thinks are crazy. The internet is where those ideas live, and that's where they thrive. All you have to do is start with one idea. Once you make that first foray into digital communities, the sheer expansiveness of the web will force you to think beyond yourself. You'll meet people you never knew existed. You'll encounter ideas that will blow up your way of thinking. I'll use myself as an example. So, poor Harriet is 5.5 years old, and I just wanted to start this blog. I started other blogs, I built other websites, but I wanted to create a space for Black women that was more substantial than what I've been seeing. We all know, well, you might not, but if you are like a part of like the Black women web, you know that makeup and beauty and celebrity gossip really dominated the internet for a long time, right? And that's still the stuff that makes a lot of money. But I wanted to create this platform where Black women could just come together and just talk about anything. So Black women can share our stories, our vision, and our talents, right? The possibilities are quite literally endless, and we haven't even scratched the tip of the iceberg. It is that possibility that compels me and the women and the men that I work with and admire online to spend so much time doing this work. Because there will always be that work to do, and it is real. We are in the middle of a historic cultural moment that was precipitated by Black women building community online. So Black Lives Matter, yeah, that's a result of Black women, Alicia Garza, Patrisse Cullors, Opal Tometi, coming together to heal, right? There's nothing frivolous about that. And we see the results of that work every day, including today. I don't know if you guys watched the news or saw what happened at Missouri, right? So every single day, we witness the fruits of Black women's digital labor. They are quite literally changing the world. But let's get back to the people who don't quite get it. Let's call them doubters, and that's no shade. I have conversations with doubters all the time. I mentioned my mom before. She still doesn't quite understand the internet. Every once in a while, she'll send me a text like, how do I say something? How do I go back to a post? Like, it never leaves, right? Like, it doesn't get deleted, Mom. But some of my best friends, my closest family members still don't quite get it. Some of the people that I admire most are still not quite there. I remember a few years ago when Prince said, quote, the internet is over, right? But it was Prince, so nobody said like, sir, you're delusional, right? And now you see Prince like tweeting and like sending Instagram, right? Because somebody like in his camp has relayed the message to him that like the internet is real. And I found that even in 2015, many still view the internet with suspicion, right, and almost disdain, particularly when it comes to activism and organizing, right? And I find that to be really interesting, but it's also depressing because we've seen from Trayvon Martin to Eric Garner to Ferguson to Black Lives Matter, we're constantly seeing the fruits of digital creativity and organizing and activism. But even beyond just the activism space, right? I got to sit down with Issa Rae maybe about a month ago, right? And Issa Rae, of course, developed The Misadventures of Awkward Black Girl, like this really phenomenal web series, right? And she told me that when she started the web series, she just wanted a platform because nobody else was going to give her a chance. Nobody else was going to finance the telling of these stories, right? But in her striking out on her own and taking up her space online, now she is going to have a full-length series on HBO, right? So like the stuff that we do online can easily translate into real and important work offline, and we're not just talking about Black Lives Matter, right? It's in all facets of who Black women are and who we want to be. But back to the doubters, right? They believe that the internet can't be real because everyone can portray, my computer just did something weird, sorry. They believe that the internet isn't real because everyone can portray themselves as anything they want to be. And that's true, right? They can hide behind their screens, we can pick and choose the information we want to present to the world, and thus have the opportunity to create false identities and experiences. And that is a legitimate concern. I think one of the most important things that we have to do on the internet is to be conscious consumers, right? We have to have a certain amount of literacy to be able to discern what is a legitimate source, what is a legitimate presentation, and what is not, right? And it happens all the time. So log on to Facebook right now and you'll see people exerting an exceptional amount of energy, right? Or like fronting, as the kids say, right? Trying to put up a false persona. For a long time, one of my personal favorite pastimes was scrolling through Instagram and looking at all the stuff that people would buy instead of paying off their student loans, right? And it's hilarious because they don't know that we know, that we know. And that certainly isn't a phenomenon unique to the internet. And that's why I don't quite understand that feeling that the internet isn't real. We do all that stuff offline as well. In fact, as a Black woman, I can tell you that most of the choices that I've made in my life have been guided by cherry-picking the parts of myself to present to the world in my daily interactions. And after editing the blog for now 5 years and facilitating these conversations every day online, I see countless other Black women who have been from birth encouraged to do the same as a means of survival, lest we accidentally trigger one of the cultural landmines meant to dehumanize or degrade us. Whether you're online or offline, every day is a performance, right? We're doing gender, as Weston Zimmerman would describe. But we're also doing race and class and sexuality. Some of us are doing organizing and entrepreneurship, right? We know what it looks like and we perform it. We all wear a mask. But by focusing on the concealment that occurs online, we'll miss completely the beautiful revelations. Digital communities offer Black women life beyond the veil. One of my favorite parts about editing for Harriet is seeing women expose themselves. And it sounds weird and voyeuristic because it is, right? But our contributors strip down. And I actually tweeted a couple of days ago after reading, I think it was an article we posted recently about a woman, she's a transracial adoptee, right? If you don't know, transracial has nothing to do with Rachel Dolezal, right? Transracial means that you are one race and you were adopted by parents of another race, right? And she was born in Haiti and basically stolen from her mother and put in an orphanage, and then she was adopted from that orphanage, right? And so this essay was her detailing the emotional scars left by kind of being ripped from her family, right? Having no ties to her culture of origin, right? And I was reading this essay, and I just remember crying, as I actually do quite a lot when I'm reading for Harriet essays, because I cried not because of the story, but because of how lucky I feel that somebody would share the worst thing that ever happened to them. And I feel emotional now. People routinely share the worst thing that's ever happened to them, the worst part of their lives, the most traumatic experiences, right? In an attempt to heal, right? But also because they trust us and they hope that in that sharing, they will help somebody else. And that's a real privilege. Anyway, back to this, but again, that's one of the reasons why I absolutely love my job, because people share their vulnerabilities. They share their dreams, their hopes, their frustrations, their hopes, their fears, and their triumphs. They leap off a cliff and trust our community to be a safe place to land. And they're willing to do so because of the desire to tell their story, because that need burns brighter than the fear of rejection or ridicule. And there are so few opportunities for Black women to take off our cool and do so safely, to set aside the internal and external expectations of extraordinary strength. I feel honored, I feel privileged. It is an absolute joy that people trust me and that they trust us. So when I get these pieces, I know that the internet is real. People ask me all the time why I think For Harriet has grown to where we are now. Starting a blog is very easy. You could do it right now. And lots of blogs are created every day. It is much more difficult to start a successful blog today than it was 5 years ago. And 10 years ago, just because the space is so flooded, right? But building a blog takes work. Building a successful blog takes more than that. A part of our success is timing. We've had some very good luck. I'm good at what I do, right? And I'm not gonna downplay that. I definitely have some good internet skills. And it takes a lot of time. But really, the true reason for success so far, and we have a long way to go, and I have all of these visions and dreams, but the reason why we have been so successful lies in the fact that I created the space that I always wanted. I recognized the opportunity because I needed it. I still need it. I started for Harriet when I was 21 years old. My father died a couple of years before that, and I was severely depressed. My site was supposed to launch on Juneteenth, but I got the dates wrong, and it launched the day after Juneteenth. If you are not familiar with Juneteenth because you're not from Oklahoma or Texas or that area, it's the day that the enslaved people in that region found out that they were free finally, right? Years after the Emancipation Proclamation, right? It's like a big thing. So that's a perfect date, and then I got the date wrong. Okay. So I started this site after Harvard College very politely asked me not to return in the fall because they felt that I was too depressed to continue doing coursework. I was absolutely lost. I needed someone to reach out to, and I hadn't found a way to do that offline. So I poured everything into the site, right? I mentioned my mom earlier. I would spend all day in bed on the computer coding and researching and reaching out to potential writers. And I really distinctly remember her standing in my bedroom doorway saying, "How is this going to help you in the future?" And in my mind, I thought, you can't see it, but I know, right? So now I'm 26 years old, and I feel like I'm moving out of second puberty. I'm in a transition period where it's after college, but before you've really figured out what the hell is going on. And second puberty is a lot like the first one. It's awkward, it's confusing, I have acne. But the thing that really sets it apart is bills, right? So I'm now an adult, and as I'm growing into my womanhood, I'm reflecting on everything. And as I'm evolving, so are my relationships. I think often of the lessons I learned from my mother and the women who cared for me. My mom is absolutely extraordinary. I mentioned before that she is an engineer. She's a 50-year-old black woman engineer. I don't know if you can even process what a lonely, horrible experience that is. But she has some stories. And I know that her pragmatism is born out of the fact that she really had to make some horrible sacrifices and endure some really just horrible traumatic experiences in order to pursue the career that she desired. And I love her, and I appreciate her. I wouldn't be a Harvard grad standing here without her. So I realized that my mom taught me how to survive, but she never taught me how to live. She taught me how to be exceptional. She taught me how to work hard, to set goals fearlessly, but I never learned how to be vulnerable. I never learned the value of being soft or sad because she couldn't teach me that, because nobody had ever taught her. So we're both grown women trying to figure it out. One of the ways that I've chosen to figure it out is by sharing and learning online, in public, in front of hundreds of thousands of other women who have joined me and opened up about their journeys. That is real, and that is sacred. I feel like the womanist feminist writing black women, the writing that womanist/feminist black women did in the 70s represents a shift in consciousness. And I feel like we are in a similar shift right now. Women are finding their voices and utilizing those voices to fashion ourselves and tell uncomfortable truths. What's being done online by Black women is important because depictions of Black womanhood in mainstream media, with few exceptions, still attempt to press us into an illegitimate mold. Even the ones that are supposed to be uplifting and, quote, empowering are still terrible. In her book, Sister Citizen, Melissa Harris Perry explores the social and political consequences of the constant perpetuation of stereotypical images of Black women. They're meant to silence us and shame us, and far too often they're working. One of the ways that we fight back against those stereotypes is by engaging in what historian Darlene Clark Hine calls the culture of dissemblance, wherein we forfeit the freedom to engage fully with all parts of ourselves publicly in an effort to dispel those stereotypes, but also to preserve our own community. I'm sure that you heard the phrase respectability politics, right? If not, then I don't know where you've been. It was coined by a former professor of mine and a woman that I love and adore, and she's just everything. Evelyn Brooks Higginbotham, right? And she did this work on the politics of respectability about the ways that Black people embraced kind of this moral authority, right? They felt that if we carried ourselves a certain way, if we engaged with our oppressors a certain way, then we would be able to kind of act in a way that would facilitate our liberation. None of those things work. Darlene Clark Hine writes that this culture created the appearance of openness and disclosure, but actually shielded the truth of their inner lives themselves from their oppressors. You see, Black women are pretty much magic, and we can hide in plain sight, but the culture of secrecy doesn't do what it was intended. It only binds us further. The public and communal nature of blogging allows Black women to disentangle ourselves from that. Women like me, who maybe share a little bit too much, reject it. We use the internet to defy those codes of silence and break down those walls of shame. And it's not just reckless exhibitionism, though. I do partake in my share of exhibitionism. And it's not always fun, and it's definitely not easy. The bravery needed to do so cannot be underestimated. Anyone who's written for the internet knows that it's not all e-hugs and affirmation. The detractors are swift and relentless. But when has a little criticism ever stopped us? This work is a reclamation of our power, not just for those who wish to impose obsolete behavioral codes. A part of that process is ensuring the space that we're navigating truly belongs to us. But like I said, it does come with hazards. In order for us to have these honest discussions, there has to be a feeling of security. And we try to establish that at Fort Harriet by reiterating that this is a site for Black women. A lot of the conversations we have on the blog are real Black girl problems. It's hair, it's domestic violence, it's patriarchy, it's sexual assault, it's misogynoir, it's campus racism. There certainly exists a tension between the fact that these are private conversations that used to be deemed intra-community, and that the conversations are powerful and revealing. They're the kind that you have in a room full of your closest girlfriends over wine. And the fact that they're happening in public does put us at risk. Honestly, Black people are still not 100% comfortable talking about everything in front of everybody, right? There is still a taboo to airing our dirty laundry in public or engaging these conversations in front of, quote, mixed company, as my grandma would say. And that's not about self-hate. That is a byproduct of the burden of representation placed upon people of African descent. Members of marginalized groups know that we are under a microscope, that every phrase that we type and every topic that we debate will be scrutinized, right? And now we're at a point where every tweet we send could end up on BuzzFeed. So, there's a quick question. If you keep up with this sort of thing, how many articles about Black Twitter, for example, have you seen on mainstream websites? Like more than 5, like 10, like 20, like there's one every single day. And this generates not only scrutiny, but it also generates revenue, right? And we have a right to be leery of that. So let's like when twerking was just, carefree gyrations that we did on the weekends, right? And now it's like the lead story on CNN, it's a major debate on MSNBC. That microscope is an obstruction because it's impossible to serve two masters. You cannot write to free yourself and also to please someone wholly unfamiliar with your experience. So you gotta block it out. For Harriet is kind of big, but it can be bigger, right? I still try to keep a community feeling, but every once in a while I'll remember how public the internet is when a piece published on the site goes viral, like beyond our normal community. And I love for new people to discover the site, but the exposure doesn't always bode well, right? Not either for the writers or for the site. It comes with its own set of headaches. On one hand, it's understandable because Black folks create culture and we are pretty freaking interesting. On the other hand, it's frustrating because these dissections so often get it wrong. They'll add annoying and unnecessary interjections like, this isn't just a Black woman's issue, or they'll ask the wrong questions. Then you'll get faux outraged comments like, so this is like the most popular one now. Of course, in the age of Black Lives Matter, we're constantly talking about state violence, right? And the most common derailment that we get is like, what about Black on Black crime, right? Like, where are you when Black people are killing each other in the streets, right? And honestly, it takes a lot for me as like the administrator of the site to just be like, who asked you? Like, you know what I mean? Like it's time for you to leave. But anyways, people are always asking me like, what if there was an entire site dedicated just for white feminists or white women? And I'm like, you mean like Jezebel? Like, it happens, right? It's just not done explicitly. But honestly, the type of scrutiny that hurts most is not even from people who are that far outside of the community. Visit a blog by Black women or read comments on a post that places Black women at the center and you'll see another type of animus, that which exists between the genders in the Black community. Black women speaking our truth. Here we go. Black women speaking our truth generates a certain type of malice, particularly from Black men. The trolls emerge. They'll say things like, it's not Black feminism, it's Black familyism. Or, what has Black feminism done to build the community, right? But the whole point of this site is that we are demonstrating how Black women and how Black feminism is building the community every single day. In everything that we tweet, in every post that we send, in every comment from one of our community members, we are building community. What we do online reflects our reality offline. And the reality is that at every turn there is someone ready to invalidate a Black woman's voice. One of the most maddening consequences of white supremacist capitalist patriarchies, Black women never get to be experts on anything, not even our own experiences. Whereas white men, for example, no shade, can be experts on everything. And I discovered this in college, not to, throw my alma mater under the bus, but I noticed that there was a certain demographic in the student body who would, no matter the subject matter, speak as if they were scholars on an issue. In fact, I've witnessed them speak condescendingly to actual scholars. These were undergraduate white men who had been socialized to believe that theirs was the most important voice in the room. And I'm certainly not timid, but sometimes I would sit in class, watch them operate, and ask myself, where does that come from? There's an arrogance and an entitlement that I will never understand, because I will never have access to that sort of privilege. Every woman has a right to her story. She is the best person to tell her story. She can engage with it as she sees fit. We need not leave it to the pros. What I'm most proud of is the fact that For Harriet has been sustained largely by women who don't make a living writing. At this point, we do employ freelancers, but we get a lot of submissions, and a lot of incredibly thoughtful, well-written submissions from people who just had a story to tell. That's a reflection of our mission to bring as many women as we can into the conversation in ways beyond just leaving a comment. At one point, I thought about shifting gears. I thought about making Coherent just an explicitly professional space, but I thought about one of my favorite essays. In Search of Our Mother's Gardens, The Creativity of Black Women in the South, Alice Walker writes that most of our foremothers bore inside them the ability to create beautiful artwork or breathtaking prose or poetry, but they just didn't have the opportunity. They didn't have an outlet. They didn't have the time. They didn't have the education. We disregard that divide between the academic/creative class and women without that training or pedigree so that we can make sure that everybody can tell their story adeptly. Because there is power of owning your voice, and it shouldn't belong to just a few. Digital communities are real, and they are sites of resistance. We are doing movement work every day, where we make ourselves, instead of allowing anyone else to have that privilege, we're fighting back. We create the images we want to see. We distribute them, and we own them. The democratization of resources and abandonment of gatekeepers frees us to explore the fullness of who we are. The reassertion of power is not just in the kinds of stories being told. It's in how we're telling the stories. Blogs and social media provide women an opportunity to construct spaces wherein we can choose to set down the societal baggage heaped upon us from the time that we are in the womb. And that's real. That's it.
Thank you all for coming. As Kimberly said, For Harriet is